All right. Thank you for setting me up for my talk, by the way. That was not planned in any shape of the imagination, but yeah, this is exactly what we're going to be talking about. Everything around agentic security today and what we can think about for at least the next couple weeks because everything moves a little bit too fast, right? All right. I'm on probably 20 plus customer calls a week. I'm an architect working on everything around AI at Solo, but I'm also doing a lot of SE work, a lot of SA work, a lot of product work, a lot of engineering work, pretty much everything in between. But what I find on, again, 20 times 6 months or so, the top three things that are always coming up is everything around security and observability as well. But like MCP server security, tooling security, like locking down specific tools, and then what can my agent actually do? What does it have access to? So that's where we get into like OBO, OIDC based OAuth, token exchange, all that, right? That is pretty much what I see constantly day in and day out. Like every conversation that I'm on, if it's the data science team, if it's the ML ops team, if it's a platform engineering team, like it doesn't matter. Somebody's asking me about security and how to lock this stuff down. So the first problem is agentic security, right? So when I'm talking about agentic security, I'm talking about your agentic framework. So whatever you're using, K-Agent, Crew AI, LangGraph, it doesn't matter. Whatever you're using, the question is, what can this agent do? What does it have access to? Who is it acting on behalf of? So this is a big question that comes up a lot, right? I'm a user. I'm using an agent. I log into whatever framework or platform I'm using. And then the question is, does this agent have different permissions than I do, right? Than my user, right? Who I'm logging in as, which would be myself. Or does the agent need different permissions than what I have? So pretty much everything around prompt guarding, OBO, logging in, authentication, authorization, all that. What can the agent do on behalf of myself? Because I'm operating it, but at the end of the day, the agent is doing its own thing, right? Non-deterministic in a what we want to be a deterministic world. So a big thing around this is prompt guards. You'll also see a lot of stuff around like traffic policies as well. So what the agent can talk to in terms of the LLM that it can access, the MCP server that it can access, the tools within that MCP server. So for example, let's say I have an MCP server with 20 tools. Can my agent access all of those tools? It shouldn't be able to, right? Maybe it needs to access 4 or 10 or whatever, but we need to have the ability to lock that down. Now, the other piece here is, okay, I'm hitting an LLM. What LLM can I hit? What can I prompt it? Can I go to my agent that has, let's say, root access, right? No agent should, but let's say it does. Can I go and can I prompt it, go delete all my Kubernetes clusters within my environment, right? Or can I do a kubectl delete pods dash capital A, right? Like, can this agent do that? So prompt guarding is very important. And then again, who you're logging in as, what the agent can do. Is it acting on behalf of you? Does it have its own credentials? Does it have its own security account? What can it do once you activate it? Okay, so the next piece is agentic networking. So when I'm talking about agentic networking, I'm really talking about the AI gateway. So whatever AI gateway you're using, right? I work at Solo, so I'm biased, right? So I'm doing a lot of work on agent gateway. And again, a lot of what we're doing is all around security, specifically logging in and permissions, right? So what can you do as the user once you're logged in? What can you do as the agent once you're logged in? Now, a big thing that's been coming up, I would say probably like the past 3 or 4 weeks or so. I spent a lot of time over the weekend like building demos out and stuff for this, but ABAC and ReBAC. Just raise a hands. Has anybody implemented anything ABAC or ReBAC related? All right, perfect. So yeah, a little bit. Yeah, cool. Perfect. So when we're talking about ABAC and ReBAC, first I'll start with ABAC. This is attribute-based access control. So if I'm thinking about like standard RBAC, right? Just roles, permissions, right? But what about if these things have to change in flux? So an attribute could be anything from your manager to the time of day, right? So I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm using an agent and this agent gives me the ability to deploy production environments. But I only want this agent to be able to deploy production environments between the hours of 9 and 5, right? So that's a good example of attribute-based access control. And it typically plugs into your policy enforcement tool. Maybe you're using OPA, Kyverno, whatever you're using. ReBAC is relationship-based access control. Anybody here go to school for computer science? Yeah, all right, bunch of people, beautiful. If we're thinking about graph theory and graph algorithms, we're thinking about nodes having the ability to connect to each other. This is relationships, right? One node to another. ReBAC is very much the same approach, but for your permissions. So it is based on the relationship, what permission or what thing can access what, right? Based on the permission. So it's all relationship-based permissions, and it's typically happening in real time as well. So like a good project around this is OpenFGA. If anybody's heard of that, that's a really cool one. Definitely check it out. It's based off of Google's Antibar. So if anybody's read that paper, it's a really solid paper. Definitely look into that. SpiceDB is another really good one too. I believe they're both, I don't know if they're both open source, but I know they both have free versions. So you can definitely take a look at those and play around with relationship-based access control. So again, a lot of this stuff at the AI gateway layer, right? So if we're thinking about the AI gateway layer as the tunnel, it's from the agent to whatever LLM, whatever MCP server or other agent if you're doing like A to A stuff, right? So what permissions does it have? What permissions do you have? And what can you ultimately access? A big piece of this as well is tokens. So tokens are in flight, right? Tokens can expire. It can be 7 days. It could be 6 minutes, whatever it is. How are you managing all that? Oh, one thing actually, I'll come back here. Your OIDC provider as well is very important, or your key. So a lot of what I see, ironically enough, is Entra, but it could be Okta, it could be Keycloak, whatever it is. That's really where your tokens are going to come from. The expiration, again, if it's 6 hours or 6 days or 6 minutes, whatever it is. So based on your IDP, your OIDC provider, that's going to come into play here in terms of, again, what you can do, what the agent can do. All right. So little diagram. Thank you to Claude for thank you to Claude for building all this. The right side of my brain doesn't work, so I'm not good at creating slides. But this is essentially the gist, right? Graphically. Again, I'm biased, agent gateway, but you could put whatever AI gateway in here you want. And then your agentic framework, so Crew AI, ADK, LangGraph, whatever you're using, and then the target. So the line of communication, in my opinion, is probably the most important piece here, right? Like I always tell customers, like, this is your tunnel, right? To get from point A to point B. What's going on within this tunnel, whether it's guardrails, whether it's elicitations, whether it's authorization, what your tool approval looks like. This is a very crucial piece because without this, your agent is pretty much just hitting the public internet, right? And then like you have zero control over that. Okay, so now what do I got? Oh, I'm doing good on time. All right, I'm gonna throw up a couple of demos here, and then I will also show you where you can find them. All right. Okay, so real quick, let me move this box here. Sorry. Okay. So real quick, if you want to find my Git repo, you can go here. Everything's under that Agentic demo repo or the AI conferences repo, and you'll see all this code in here. So you can go play around with this if you'd like. Okay. So the first demo is I want my agent to be able to get from point A, which is the framework itself, to whatever the destination is. I want to be able to ensure that I have an AI gateway sitting there. In this case, I'm using Agent Gateway. So the first step is, can my agent even go through a gateway, right? Does my framework have the capability? And luckily, I would say the majority of them do right now. So if you look at the ADK code, just go to GitHub, look at the code. If you look at the Crew AI code, there's always typically a way to specify your proxy address. And usually when they're talking about the proxy address, right, any AI gateway, like this is your data plane proxy layer. So whatever that IP address is or whatever that host name is, you can specify that within your framework. So I'm just going to ask it, like, what can you do, right? And my demo failed last week when I did a conference talk, so I already prepared some stuff here. But this is the gist, right? If you're using an AI gateway that exposes the proper metrics for you to look at everything from response times to latency to errors, etc., right? Like we want to be able to build a particular graph like this. One thing that I do want to point out, I think this is like ridiculously important, are your tokens going in versus your tokens going out. This is a conversation that like for the past 2 weeks, I've been constantly having, which is, hey, how do I manage my token usage? And there's a couple of ways to do this, like traffic policies, which I'll show you in a second, to essentially specify only allow this agent to be able to use 10 tokens, right? That's an exaggeration, but you can do that. But tokens going in versus tokens going out, drastically important, right? That's really where a lot of your cost comes from. If you're using, let's say, Sonnet models versus Opus models, your tokens going in, as in the sentence or the question that you're asking, that's more or less going to be the same. But the tokens coming out, right? And that's based on the model that you're using, because if you're using a higher level model or a more advanced level model, the processing is a lot different. The hardware that's being used is a lot different. It's better. And because of that, it's more expensive. Because of that, more output. Because of that, more tokens. So having the ability to look at your token usage, super important if you care about cost optimization at all, which I think the majority of organizations are trying to figure out, like, how they can do any type of cost optimization in the AI space. The last thing that you want to do is have somebody using an agent that's $20,000 a month to get the best chicken parm recipe, right? I might do that, but I'm sure my company might not want me to do that. That's the first piece. The first piece is, okay, I now have an agent that can go through a gateway, and I know that I can now control that traffic because I'm controlling the gateway, I'm controlling the proxy. So a couple of different things here. I'll first show prompt guards. Now, this is something that comes up constantly. Again, I don't want the ability for my agent to go and just delete all my Kubernetes clusters in my environment. So this specific prompt guard I have here, this is just a regex that essentially captures anything with credit card in it, right? So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to apply this. Okay. Now we can see the successful output above. This was when I just asked it right before I got on stage, was a credit card. Now what I want to do is I want to ask it essentially the same thing, right? Like I want to be able to prompt it in the same way, which in this case, I'll just send a quick curl, right? So what is a credit card? And the goal here now is, because of this prompt guard, I'm going to get a 403, right? I'm not allowed to do this. And you can get like you could put like a custom specialized message. It's optional, but you can essentially tell the user why. Sorry? Oh, for sure. Yeah. Is that good? Yeah. A little bit more. How's that? Yeah. Beautiful. All right. Cool. So that I would say is a big piece. It's definitely something that, like, I also believe it's low hanging fruit. Like, it's so easy to do prompt guards right now that it's definitely something that everybody should be thinking about. Like, from a security perspective, there's probably a couple of things that you're thinking about within your environment that's, okay, this is super easy, let's implement it. I think prompt guards are definitely one of those things, and it's arguably one of the most powerful features from an agent security perspective. Okay, now the next piece is around, I'm doing good on time, traffic policies. So again, if I want to rate based on response, if I want to rate based on token usage, right? So again, I have an agent and I say this agent can only use 10 tokens per hour. What does that look like? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, actually that should already be captured. So that's perfect, right? So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to do a quick curl, and my screen's a little bit weird right now because I'm so zoomed in, but let's see if I can get that to work properly. Hold on one sec. Go back up. Okay, cool. So there's the verbose output, and then we can see something's going on underneath the hood, right? Now with the traffic policy, what I can set here, and this is all declarative, by the way, right? So if you're running in Kubernetes today, you can absolutely use this just like any other Kubernetes manifest. But we can see some output here. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a couple of curls one more time with this policy in place here. First one should work. Yep. All right, we'll wait for that to complete. And then I'll run one right afterwards, and that should fail. Right. So if I look here, you can see, okay, you hit your rate limit, right? So those are two examples. Again, pretty straightforward to set up in terms of what you can do to get your agentic security looking good right now. So let's go ahead and kick things up a notch here a little bit. I'm going to scroll down. Now I want to talk about MCP Auth. Is anybody using MCP today? All right, cool. How many people are building their own MCP servers versus just using whatever out there on the internet? I know nobody wants to raise their hands, but I know everybody is. Don't lie. So the biggest thing to think about with MCP is standard input output, right? SCDIO versus streamable HTTP. Anything that's standard input output, you think about it like a local package, local module. It's literally just code running locally. It's functions and methods and whatever way you're building your MCP server. Streamable HTTP MCP servers are the same thing, right? If you open up any MCP server, it's just a bunch of functions and methods. Your tools are just functions and methods. But how you can secure connectivity to it versus what can you do if something's local, right? And it's just a local package, not much you can do. But if it's something like the GitHub Copilot MCP server, it's sitting on some box somewhere in the world in the cloud, and you can't do anything about that, right? You can't like pen test it and be like, hey, everything's good or bad. GitHub's probably not going to allow you to do that. But what you can do is you can secure connectivity to that MCP server. You can set up your auth to that MCP server. You can set up what tools are available to be accessed on that MCP server, right? So there's a lot you can do from an auth perspective when it comes to MCP. As you can see here, I am connected to a local MCP server running. Let me just go ahead and disconnect and reconnect, right? And this is one that I built. It's real straightforward. It's just two tools, add and multiply, right? So if I just do 2 and 5, right? My math isn't all that great, but we should see 5 here. Now what I want to do is, because this MCP server, it's technically a streamable HTTP MCP server. You can see I just have a Kubernetes service sitting in front of it, so it acts as streamable HTTP. Now what I want to do is I want to set up auth, because anybody right now can hit this box, right? It doesn't matter. But what I can do is I can set up a gateway policy very similar to the traffic policy that we set up, as in same object, except what I'm doing here is I'm doing some JWT auth. And this is super basic, super simple in terms of like demo purposes, but in the real world, you're going to want to set up something a little bit more advanced, right? You don't want to manage all these JWTs. That's going to be a major pain. But what you do want to do is think about your ReBAC and your ABAC configurations. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to apply this. All right. And then I'm going to open up MCP Inspector again. I'm going to go to authentication, and you can see this is already set up here. Don't be like me. Make sure you hit that toggle. And if you're sitting there wondering why isn't my authentication working properly, it's because the toggle isn't hit. So I'm going to do this. It's a bearer token, so I'm always going to have bearer in the front, right? And then I'm going to disconnect. Let's see. It's going to let me do it. And reconnect. Hold on. Let me do this. Let me disconnect. Okay, now I'm going to turn on authorization, and I'm going to hit connect, right? So now I can see these tools, right? But let's say I disconnect and I turn off authorization and I go to reconnect, right? Nothing's going to happen. Actually, yeah, there we go. Okay, there's my error. So I should be getting that error essentially saying you're not passing in a token, right? You don't have any authorization to this MCP server. So that's cool, right? We got some authorization. But what about if we want to take things a step further and we want to specify what tools are available? So I'm going to set up another gateway policy. And in this case, I'm just going to say the add tool. This is CEL, C-E-L. You can see it in the Solo docs. It's common expression language. It's essentially your own, how can you put it? Your own version of Rego, right? In Solo or whatever else, right? It's just an expression language. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to run this. Okay, so now at this point, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to reconnect, right? I'm going to clear that. I'm going to list. But as you can see, I now only have the add tool. I don't have the multiply tool anymore, right? All right, and I already did that one. And I am now at the end of the presentation. I made a really good time, actually. So, sorry? Beautiful. All right, let's do some questions. Anybody have some questions? Or give you some of your time back? Question back there?
Yeah, that was a nice presentation. Of late, I have seen many organizations using Agentic AI for SOC and security incident and event management.
Yep.
Since you deal with many of your clients, I wanted to check, are there any concerns or are there any practices from your side for monitoring agentic AI agents from going rogue or not doing their intended jobs? Did you observe anything of that sort?
Yeah, you're saying on our side, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We don't have a SaaS. So this is everything that's running in your environment. So we're not controlling any like data or anything like that, right? So from our perspective, it's more of it's running in your environment, and we're going to do the best that we can to make sure that you're running it properly. But at the end of the day, what you do is what you do. In my opinion, if you're going to run anything agentic within your environment, the first thing that you have to get a good understanding of is what you're running and why you're running it, all right? Like right now, I think a lot of people are just spinning up Claude Code, or they're spinning up Codex, or they're doing whatever, and they're saying, okay, I'm going to use this as a coding agent, or I'm going to use this to architect something for me, or maybe product people or designers or whatever. You got to figure out exactly what in your environment you want to be able to use agentic with. I don't think we're at this stage where like we can do fully autonomous yet. If you got to go into the prompt and you got to fix something, or you got to say, no, don't do this, do that, you're not doing anything autonomously. And I would say that's step 2, is figuring out how much you need to be in the loop for your agents and what you want those agents to do. Again, going back to step one, right? So really it's the best way to ensure that the agents are doing what you want them to do is explain it to them, right? I see a lot of times where people are like, oh, this agent isn't doing what I wanted it to do or like what I expected it to do. And then I go and I look at the prompt and somebody just said, hey, build this middleware for me. And it's, yeah, it doesn't know what you're trying to do, right? It has no idea what to implement. It has no idea what framework to implement. It has no idea of its constraints. It's actually very good at understanding constraints as long as you specify them. So I would say the best answer is like, do your homework in terms of the agent that you're using, right? Use claude.md files, or I forget what the codex ones are. I think it's like agents.md or something like that. Make sure you're specifying within your prompt, do this, do that, stay within these guardrails. But at the end of the day, it's really up to you, right? You're trying to make something that's naturally non-deterministic as deterministic as you possibly can. And you kind of have to think about it like you're talking to a human. Like humans are non-deterministic either, right? We don't know what anybody's doing. So if we want people to do a specific thing, we have to explain it to them in a particular way. We got to do the same thing with agents. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, awesome presentation.
Thanks.
Yeah. And for the prompt guards, are you using a specific method or framework? And also, what kind of telemetry do you put in to catch any gaps in the security and everything else?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the prompt guard specifically, I'm using agent gateway policies, which is, it's a CRD, right? So Agent Gateway has an enterprise version. It also has an open source version. You can run it in any Kubernetes cluster anywhere. And it's just one of the objects, or rather one of the parameters that's available within the Agent Gateway policy object to set those prompt guards. And that could be based off of response. It could also be based off of token usage. Yeah. And I'm sorry, you had a second question there too. Yeah.
Any special, any favorite observability or telemetry tricks?
Yeah. So we fully expose all the metrics at just like a /metrics endpoints and traces as well. So we integrate with anything from Datadog, Loki, New Relic, it doesn't matter. We use OTel as well. So if you have OTel collectors for logs, traces, metrics, we can incorporate those as well. Yeah. But everything's exposed. Yeah. It's just a matter of like where you want to run it. I typically set up a lot of environments like Grafana, Prometheus, Key, Tempo, but a lot of customers are also running like Datadog and enterprise solutions. Yeah.
I do have one. Based on your experience,
Yeah.
what's the biggest risk companies are assuming? Like these companies that are implementing chatbots and more AI projects and connecting directly to the AP, to the cloud services like Vertex AI and more. And not implementing something like Agent Gateway or any guardrail between their services and the actual models.
Yeah. So I think you probably answered it. The biggest risk is not doing any of it. And again, I'm biased, right? So I would say Agent Gateway, but like in reality, whatever AI gateway you want to use, I don't care, right? Whatever agentic framework you want to use, I don't care. Just make sure that you're putting something in place to hit the low hanging fruit, right? Nobody should be able to just prompt an agent, whatever they want to prompt the agent. There needs to be rate limits in place, right? You shouldn't be using hundreds of thousands of tokens every 10 minutes to do something that you're not supposed to be doing within your organization, right? Or whatever your particular job is. From a security perspective, it's actually stuff that like we've been doing for a very long time. Like when I started my career, I was a Windows sysadmin. And one of the biggest things that we did was like Active Directory implementation, right? And authentication and authorization. Like we're literally taking the same stuff that we've been working on for 15 plus years and just enabling it in the agentic space. And some things are a little bit different, right? Until agentic, I didn't see a lot of like ReBAC and ABAC stuff. It was more RBAC and standard roles and permissions and stuff. So things are changing, but like the primitives are still there, right? There's always the underlying piece that's always there. Networks are still networks and infrastructure is still infrastructure.
I work in a company where we do the SaaS side of the work for the AI.
Yeah.
And you are mostly on the encryption in transit side of the things, right?
For Agent Gateway,
For
yeah,
the
like
agent
a lot of the
gateways.
security pieces and
So
stuff, a lot of the observability.
So
Yeah.
Glue AI is one of the
Sorry?
Glue AI is one of the products that you have.
So we rebranded recently. There's no more Glue.
Okay.
It's just solo enterprise for whatever. But yeah,
Okay.
you're right. Yeah.
All right. How do you handle the handoff from the static evaluators to the transit ones? Do you define any standards? Do you have any handoff best practices that you work with from the people who send you the
Yeah.
data?
So when you say handoff, I just want to confirm, are you referring to like, how do we get running in customer environments or?
Or how do you evaluate how the customers are building it and sending the data correctly instead of
Yeah.
dumping data in
Yeah,
internet?
good question. So I would say the majority of, I apologies if I'm repeating myself. I think I said this in the beginning, but the majority of conversations that I have are like more or less the same at this point. Differences and variations, of course, but like a lot of them are, how do I secure this thing? How do I get my agent to talk to this thing? And I would say anybody that's in the agentic realm right now, like any organization that you're working in, you're in a very good position because not a lot of people know how to do this stuff, right? So you're in a very good position to be the, whatever you want to call it, the thought leader or the whatever within your organization to set up those frameworks. So what you're saying is like, what frameworks are you using? And the question and the answer is, I go a lot based off of what the specs look like, right? There's an MCP server security spec, right? And I go off of those specs, but those specs also veer off. So a good example is a lot of MCP clients who MCP JAM, MCP Inspector, VS Code, or whatever, they're implementing OIDC, but they're not implementing the entire OIDC spec, right? So based on the client that's being used, you have to be able to like go tell the client, hey, this is why, this is what you should be doing. So I also don't think that there is a specific framework that is, this is the thing, and it's not changing right now. I think it's really based on what the customer wants to do and how you're going to get them there. I don't think there's a golden path right now is what I'm saying. Yeah.
One last follow-up
Yeah.
question on that. You mentioned that you worked with different companies for architecture, right?
Yeah.
So have you seen any differences between, say, a healthcare company and a financial company, like HIPAA compliance and PCI
So
compliance?
the answer, surprisingly enough, is no. And like the customers that I'm working with, like I'm working with the largest financial institutions in the world. I'm working with a lot of 3-letter organizations. I'm working with arguably the largest telecom provider in the world. So we're talking like Super Bowl ads, iPhone launches, all of it. And so these are like very different organizations, right? Very different types of organizations. And I would say in the standard like DevOps platform engineering world, like you're talking to different teams based on a different tool, a specific tool and a specific product. And to your point, it's like these organizations typically do this stuff. These organizations typically do this stuff. With AI right now, it doesn't matter who the organization is. Everybody's trying to do the same thing. Yeah. Yeah.